My T-Rex barber is a lesbian.
All right. Steve, want to put a marker in this so I know where the episode actually starts?
All right, Chuck Tingle ends now.
Hi, I'm Greg. I'm the lead singer for Lipstick Generation.
And I'm Dr. Chuck Tingle. I'm the bassist for Lipstick Steve Generation. And I'm not Dr. Chuck Tingle. He is way more handsome and successful than I am. I'm Steve, the bassist for Lipstick Generation.
And welcome to the Lifted Panel. Today on the Lifted Panel, we are ranking every Chuck Tingle novel. Wait, hold on. That
would be such a long episode.
No, we are talking about REM and Life's Rich Pageant. The fourth REM album. Why are we doing the fourth REM album? Why are we just jumping in the middle of a band's catalog? Because Victor was on our Bad for Good series, and the Black Mages, and One for All Part 2. I'm like, I owe Victor a solid. Victor, you get to pick an album, we do. And so that's why we're doing REM. Speaking of Victor, hey, he's one of our special guests today. We've got Victor Krause joining us back on the show.
Hey, I'm here.
And wait, who's that over there? Oh, it's the world's second greatest fan fiction author. It's Gavin Wallace-Ailsworth.
Hello.
Technically, Dr. Tingle's works aren't fan fiction, unless he's a fan of himself.
Which he probably is.
Fair enough.
I'm sure he is.
He definitely is, because he writes books about getting fucked by his awards.
So, for those who weren't listening to our conversation that I'm not posting, Steve, do you want to explain who Chuck Tingle is for the audience?
So, as you may recall, if you listened to last week's episode, we had a delightful Peter Chris Empreg fan fiction book, and that got us off on the tangent of, people writing weird erotica for money, and, sort of the king of that world, Dr. Chuck Tingle, who, Google Dr. Chuck Tingle, you'll find his Amazon page where you can find pages and pages and pages of his mostly self-published, but occasionally actually published on real paper for legit, you guys, books. And by books, I mean basically short story collections. Because I don't think any of them are particularly long.
He might disagree.
Ooh. Hey, double entendres. I think between the four of us, one book has been read. We're not going to say who read it. You just have to guess.
So yeah, REM, Life's Rich Pageant. Typically, we go around the panel and talk about our histories with the band and the album. Victor, since you're the one who's sort of the guest of honor today, tell us a little bit about your history with REM and this album in particular.
So, this is going to be a little bit embarrassing because you're like, we bring on a guy and he loves REM. He's probably a longtime fan. But the answer to that is actually no. I remember very distinctly when I was probably in elementary school, one of my sisters driving me somewhere put on It's the End of the World as We Know It and being like, oh, you should check this out. And I did not like it. And then several decades later, the infamous podcast "Are You Talking REM Re-Me" happens, yes. And I was a huge fan of the U2 one, and then they started doing REM, and I was like, I don't actually have that much experience with this band at all, so it'll be interesting to see how it goes. And then I'm listening to the show, starting to sort of get into it, and then once I begin listening to the albums independent of that show coming out, this is one of the first ones where I was like, okay, this band is kind of something special. So that was about probably now a little over a year ago.
Yeah.
But they've quickly ascended into one of my favorite bands of all time. And they have more masterpieces than subpar albums, which is kind of ridiculous the more I think about it. And this is one of them, in my opinion, and probably in most REM fans' opinions. And I'm super excited to talk about it. I wrote about 2,000 words about it for Greg this week. And it actually made me love the album even more. So that was awesome.
Yeah, I did request, because I'm a guy who enjoys spoilers for things. And so I wanted to get Victor's take on the album as I was listening to it to sort of see what someone who loves and adores this band thinks about this album, so I could try to see if that would help me reinterpret the album as I was listening. And before I get into my history with REM, I also want to give a shout out to Victor for covering entire REM albums. How many have you done at this point?
I've only done one.
You've only
REM
done the
album.
one?
But you've got plans for this one.
I started in January and I just finished it, so...
I mean, he's covering the entire REM catalog, so...
Yeah, definitely. Well, I have plans to do at least 2 more.
No, you're doing the whole catalog. Announced first on the Lipstick panel, Victor Krause will cover the entire REM catalog.
Lipstick exclusive.
All right.
Good luck.
I guess in theory I could live a long time, so maybe
Yeah,
I
there
will.
you go.
I mean, if you can do one every 6 months, you're golden. You'll catch up with them real fast.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. They already wrote the song, so that was actually a huge weight off my shoulders.
Yeah, it
I
saves
didn't
a
have
lot
to
of
write
time.
it.
Yeah, writing a whole bunch of REM songs, real challenging if, you're not friends with Michael Stipe.
Yeah, when did you start recording your REM album that just came out?
I started in January.
Yeah, oh, dude, one every 6 months? Yeah, you got this. Okay, you can roll this out.
I also want to say, just real quick, I picked Life's Rich Pageant because it is kind of it's no longer my very favorite of theirs, but it was kind of my first favorite. And I was hoping it would sort of be a good, entree into the world of REM. And I sort of planned out this order, if I got to do more REM episodes, what order I would go in. And it jumped around a lot in the chronology, but the more that I listened to this and talked to Greg about it, I was kind of like, we should just go chronological from here on out.
There we go. Adding a third band chronologically to the panel, Steve.
Except for the fact that we have to jump back and do 3 more albums.
Right.
Yeah, but what if every album was extremely good?
See?
So
Also, we have to jump back and do more Peter Criss albums because we jumped forward for One for All, but we skipped 3 solo albums. So really, it's the same thing. Peter Criss, REM. We're setting the same precedent.
So we're going to pretend that the first 3 REM albums don't exist for purposes of the podcast?
No, we'll go back and do them. Remember how our Kiss episodes are our most popular downloads, Steve?
Yeah.
Remember how there's still a bunch of solo albums and stuff we said we don't need to do?
Yeah.
But then we're like, oh, shoot, we want to keep weekly listeners?
Yeah.
I found a solution, buddy.
Yeah.
Get ready for 7 Ace Frehley solo albums.
Yay.
I'll tell you this. I'm less excited about those Ace solo albums than you are.
Oh, no.
Yeah, oh boy.
Hoo boy, Anomaly. The best part about that album is that you can fold it into a pyramid.
Really?
Yeah, the album art, it's like a cardboard thing. You can fold it into a pyramid and the CD still sits inside of it.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
And you're like, oh man, I need to unfold this pyramid to get out the CD. No, I don't.
It can just stay in there.
It can just stay there. Although there's some good troll songs in that catalog that I actually kind of want to force Steve to listen to, like Dolls. Just him listening to that would be a joyous part of my life.
I'm sure you do, Greg. I'm sure you do.
But anyway, onto this good album. So my experience with REM is I knew the singles because you just would hear them, like friends would play them. My dad is into REM. And so he had a couple REM CDs kicking around the house. I don't remember which ones they were, but I listened to them and I'm like, yeah, this is pretty good. And never really dived too far into the band other than just acknowledging they were pretty good. And whatever CDs I listened to when I was driving around that I borrowed from my dad were pretty good. So yeah, solid band, and I liked this album.
So, if your dad's really into REM, how long before we hear him do a parody of an REM song about how, say, we're going to go with Milwaukee fans are, gay, full of STDs, and bad at sports?
Well, I don't know how... my dad is as into REM as he is into Cheap Trick, actually, and that...
Yeah, that song that we just listened to earlier today?
Oh, God.
About how Pittsburgh fans are gay, full of STDs, and bad at sports?
I share a name with my father. I do not endorse his music. It's not representative of me and the work that I do, so I do not think that every woman in the city of Pittsburgh is a whore. Not that there's anything wrong with that, and that I think
economically there would be something very wrong with that.
But
That's just an unsustainable
But
economy.
I think that sexual shaming is something that our society needs to move away from. But that said, transitions. Hey,
that said, if they're all full of STDs, that's a problem. An important part of dealing with sex work as a part of culture is that it needs to be something that can be done safely.
True. REM, they're a band that I like, and I don't have strong opinions on, in that I think this is a good album. There was nothing on it that really surprised me. So I wish I felt a little bit stronger about this band, but they're just like a band where I had a casual familiarity with the hits and a couple albums, and am still sort of in the same place where this wasn't the album that converted me into a diehard REM fan. It was like, yes, this is an REM album. It is good. I didn't get anything unexpected other than, oh man, you guys really are from the South. Got it.
Which is fair enough, and I think the more I thought on it, the more I was like, I don't know if this is the one to start on, but it was the one for me that kind of started the eye-opening process.
Yeah, and I can see why this would be a good album for, I can see why it was a commercial breakthrough for the band. I could see why this would start to get more momentum and get them out of the college circuit and more into the mainstream. So I can see where, the appeal of this album is, but I think as someone who was already, generally familiar with what the band was about, not getting any surprises on the album may have hurt it a little bit for me. Really wanted, a weird deep cut that gave me something unexpected, as opposed to, oh, this is exactly what I expected.
Fair enough.
But that's, I think, my own problems as a listener with expectations, where I still thought it was very good. But I'm like, man, I just want, a really weird, off-the-wall deep cut that just, balls-to-the-wall bonkers. As opposed to, yeah, okay, this is when they started to come into their mainstream sound. So it's like if your first Kiss album was Rock and Roll Over, for Gavin on the panel, who remembers what that album sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where it's like, hey, that's a good, solid album, which has pretty much one sound throughout it. And it's pretty indicative of the overall Kiss 70s sound. But you know what? Someone might do better with Creatures of the Night or something weirder like Revenge. It depends on the person. But this one, it wasn't the REM conversion album for me. But, you didn't really have to, sell me much on converting them. It's not like the needle moved towards the negative. It moved more towards the positive. Sweet. More songs for the playlist. Gavin,
Excellent.
How about you? What's your history with this album?
Well,
And the band.
Yeah, so REM, they're one of those bands that, my parents had a casual interest in REM. So I think, let's see, growing up they had Automatic for the People and Out of Time. So I would hear those albums occasionally, and, I knew all the hits from the radio and stuff, and I always kind of liked them, but never, I just never, dove in. But I would never say anything bad about them when I was asked about them. I just, they were just a cool band that I didn't know about. But then Patton Oswalt released a book called Zombie Spaceship Wasteland, which is just kind of a series of essays and memoir kind of things. And he has this whole thing about his kind of year, I think it's between high school and college, where he worked at a movie theater and listened to Fables of the Reconstruction every day. And he talks a lot about that album and what it meant to him. And he has Michael Stipe on the audiobook. Michael Stipe actually reads some of the lyrics from the album. And as a big Patton Oswalt fan, I went, I should check this album out, and heard Fables and fell in love with it. Moved around to a couple other albums too. I had heard this one before, but really, I almost think I'm a bigger Fables of the Reconstruction fan than I am an REM fan. But with this album, I've heard it a couple times and obviously listened to it a bunch for this, and it's a great album.
So in relation to your Patton Oswalt story, Patton Oswalt was the one who introduced me to the greatness that is the Damn Yankees music video for High Enough.
Yes.
Where
In a
Ted
factory
Nugent,
that makes sparks.
where Ted Nugent comes out of the house and is shot at by the police, but he is rocking so hard that the bullets deflect off him. And if I know Ted Nugent is for one thing, it's for responsible education about guns. So, Steve, what's your experience with Patton Oswalt and REM?
I've vaguely followed Patton Oswalt's career. I enjoy a lot of his work. He's got some really good jokes. Much condolences for the personal stuff he went through a few years ago with his wife dying and all of that happening. He's a great comedian and seems to be generally a pretty good person. REM, much like everybody else, I was passingly familiar with their singles, and it was the sort of thing where, like, if they came on, it'd be like, oh shoot, Stand, this is a really good song. Oh shoot, Shiny Happy People, this is a great song that's made even better by the fact that some of my friends did an AMV of it with Grave of the Fireflies back in college, and that is freaking hilarious. It's, End of the World as We Know It, aka The Thinking Man's We Didn't Start the Fire, and I was even in a 90s cover band that covered... I'm spacing on Losing My Religion, the obvious one, for a while. So I was passingly familiar with them. And then this Tuesday, I went into the office and I put on this album and I listened to it. I was like, yeah, it was a pretty good album. And then this Wednesday, I went into the office and I put on this album and listened to it. I was like, yeah, that's still a pretty good album. And anybody who's listened to this podcast, to the Kiss episodes before, might be noticing this is a little bit incongruous. Like, what do you mean you listened to this album 3 times? 3 whole times. I did my ranking on Friday because I like REM and wanted to listen to their album a number of times. And Greg was hinting at this before, that this album felt a little samey throughout. There were a couple times where I was like, these songs, they've got that really good post-punk energy, and I like them, but they do sound a lot like each other sometimes. In such a way that, like, if I'd had this cassette sitting in my parents' car when I was learning to drive instead of, what was the, why am I spacing on the name? Hold on.
Chuck Tingle audiobook.
Maybe right. Instead of the Chuck Tingle
Instead
audiobook.
of Gist by Smashing Pumpkins.
No, I listened to that one very intentionally. Why am I spacing on the name of the band? Instead of Let Your Dim Light Shine by Soul Asylum. That's the one I listened to on repeat.
That's a great album.
Yeah, I've listened to it a ton because, I'd be driving to Taekwondo practice or whatever and was like, what tapes do we have in here? Oh, we have Let Your Dim Light Shine and like some, I don't know, whatever Celtic music Mom was listening to. So Soul Asylum it is. I would probably have a very similar attitude to them where, like, I'm a little embarrassed because High School Me's taste was a little bit bad sometimes, but, like, I don't know, still a good album. If String of Pearls comes on, I'm like, oh, shoot, this song's kind of amazing despite being kind of stupid.
Well, if kind of amazing despite being kind of stupid is your thing, there's a couple of REM albums after this one that are going to be exactly your jam.
Excellent.
Also, one other kind of amusing thing about this album specifically is one time fairly early on in my relationship with my girlfriend, she came up from New Mexico to visit, and it was for my birthday, and she got me this album on CD for my birthday.
Aww.
And because she was coming up to visit, I had gotten her this album on vinyl.
And you two are married now, right?
Not quite. We're still going out. Still talking about REM.
That's precious.
That's some real, like, Gift of the Magi for the 90s kind of shit.
Gift of the Magi 86 or whatever.
But yeah, I think Steve was, brought up a good point of what I was hinting at, is that a lot of the album does sort of fall into the same sonic space. I did skim through the first 3 albums for this podcast just to see where the evolution was. So it's nice that Michael Stipe learned how to enunciate. That's very very good of him to finally let his words be heard clearly on albums.
Okay, so the murmur episode is going to be real annoying from Greg's perspective.
Why
can't you just enunciate? Lyrics are important, guys.
I mean, the fact that he called it Murmur gives it some points of just like he understands.
What is this album about? I don't know, it's just like murmuring.
Yeah, but I think the musicality of those three albums is more interesting. I think just there's more dynamic shifts on the albums. There's also more energy and aggression, I felt. This is like...
Oh, really? I don't feel that at all. I feel like this is maybe their most energetic album.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I felt from skimming them. Just like listening to like a minute of each song, feeling them out. Just because I wanted to really dissect and analyze this album. So I listened to this album maybe like 7 times last week. And then those albums, like I said, I was just skimming through the songs to get a feel for what they were like. Just so I could see where the evolution was. And I felt more aggression from those albums based upon the very limited listening that I did. But this is like, I don't know, the first albums, they were like, kind of like, this is gonna be a terrible comparison. It's gonna make me lose all credibility, but I'm gonna go for it. So, the first couple albums were like early albums by The Cult, and then this is like, what if it was Bare Naked Ladies doing the same songs? So they transitioned from early Cult into Bare Naked Ladies, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because I like Bare Naked Ladies better than early Cult.
I mean, as a Canadian, I feel like we would have to stop being friends if you were like, Bare Naked Ladies are bad. And be like, all right, get out of my house, Greg.
No, the Bare Naked Ladies are one of the best alternative rock bands of all time.
Yeah.
Hot take trying.
I mean,
yeah, he's back.
I'm not even
going
going to
to be recording that today.
Bare Naked Ladies are some brilliant songwriters.
Speaking of brilliant songwriters, you guys ready to get into this ranking?
Oh,
yeah. I like that transition.
I got a new transition drop somewhere in here. It may come up today.
All right, I'm done talking about this crappy song.
Not today.
Nope. All right, so coming in as the least best song on Life's Rich Pageant, we have some disagreement in the panel in that I think this is one of the better songs, and the rest of you are wrong.
I fucking knew it. I fucking knew it.
So, that's at the beginning of our ranking, The Flowers of Guatemala.
Oh, I was wrong. Okay.
No, I called that Greg would love this one. It's in my notes.
You're like, this is a slow, boring ballad. Greg's an old person, so he likes it.
I thought he wasn't going to like it because I cannot for the life of me understand what they're saying.
I looked up the words.
Yeah, I looked up the words too.
Okay.
This one... So there's a song that we'll get to later on the album where the lyrical message, at least according to Genius, is there's stuff to be angry about and we're angry, but it's not specifying what the things they're angry about is. It's just like angst that's going nowhere, which really annoys me. Maybe it's because I was a generally happy teenager, you know, coming back from years of, like, child abuse and violence. And so when my teenage friends were like, we're angsty about what? Living in the burbs and having, like, a decent upper middle class life? I got stabbed as a child. Shut the fuck up. So, angst that goes nowhere really annoys me, but angst with a purpose, I think, is great. And
they
so
get more specific on document.
Yeah. So this is like, hey, we're angsty about, like, children in Guatemala being raped and sold into sex trafficking. Yeah, that's something to be angsty about. That's pretty terrible. Thank you for writing a song about your angst about just, like, people being kidnapped in Guatemala. So...
But is that what Flowers of Guatemala is about?
That's what Genius said it was about.
It's not as explicit about, like, exactly what's happening, but it is about, like, you know, Guatemala and people disappearing, whether that's by human trafficking or death squads or who knows what, but just like they're concerned about that being a thing and that the U.S. government is involved in the process and supporting the regime.
Yeah, and so that is a good lyrical message and, like, actual interesting concept. And so that gives the song a lot of bonus points for me. Like I said, a lot of these songs kind of fall into a similar sonic space and quality. So, as I was listening over and over again, the ones with the more meaningful lyrics ranked higher because the melodies, a lot of them were similar quality. So this one with lyrics that I actually thought were interesting helped me like the song quite a bit more. And so now, knowing that message, it's just one of the highlights from the album and a song that I look forward to listening to when I listen to the entire thing.
I thought it was just about, like, Amanitas mushrooms,
I mean, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's about
No, I
getting
think it's just-
high, you guys.
It's about getting high and then realizing shit's fucked up in Guatemala, man.
Which, P.S., we need the "I got stabbed as a child, shut the fuck up" as a new audio stinger. That needs to be on the soundboard.
Steve, I'll let you add that in.
All right, but I don't remember where it is, so I put the marker where you said it.
I'm not one of these guys who looks up lyrics to songs or ever understands ever what people are saying, no matter how clearly they enunciate. So I mean, this is me doing my Greg impression, but just because this is towards the bottom of my ranking doesn't mean I don't love this song.
Oh, damn, I sounded such an asshole.
It's time you did some explaining.
And this one, so I think a couple of times in my screeds about this album that I sent to Greg, I mentioned that I'm not really fond of the musical structural convention commonly known as the bridge. But I think that this song has a great bridge and a great instrumental right after it. And it really, like, takes this song up to the next level. Like, if it didn't have that, it might be my lowest ranked song on the album. But as it stands, I think it's kind of a beautiful piece and also sort of harkens back to how they were writing songs on the earlier albums.
I don't like bridges is probably the weirdest musical hot take I've ever heard.
Yeah, I kind of want you to elaborate on that because, like, I think there's good
Did he not
bridges
send
and
you a
bad
screed,
bridges.
Greg?
No, he did send me a whole bunch of stuff, but I figured that would be something to ask about on the episode. So, what in particular about bridges do you not like?
So it feels like whenever there's a song that I really like, the bridge is always the worst part. Like, it always takes it down a step. I think my favorite example is, this isn't even a song that I love so much anymore, but certainly when I first heard it, Possess Your Heart by Death Cab for Cutie is about 8 minutes of a pretty sweet groove, and then there's, like, seriously 20 seconds of bridge. And that part sucks. And if it was not in there, I don't think anyone would give a shit.
Can I just say that the thought of an 8-minute Death Cab for Cutie song just made me visibly frightened?
It's okay. There's a 20-minute little bridge to break up the monotony a little.
20-second bridge in 8 minutes.
Golly, that does sound a little bit tedious.
It's weird. It's weird. Like, it would be different if it was an entire minute of that 8 minutes was this other thing where it kind of, like, adds something, like, structurally to it. But it's really just, like, this weird break that if you took it into an audio thing, you could probably cut out, like, seamlessly and no one would notice. Because it's the stupidest part of the song. And I feel like just in any given song, the bridge is the worst part.
We should have at least you listen to some Fable Cry. It's a band that Greg and I are friends with that I'm always impressed with the strength of their bridges. Like, they'll have a song that's pretty okay, and then it'll get to the bridge, and it's like, oh, this bridge is the best part of this song by far.
I'm open to the idea of a bridge being good, obviously, because I think this album actually has like 2 or 3 where I'm like, oh, this is the best part of the song. But personally, when I'm songwriting now, I just don't write them because I'm like, I don't ever have any good ideas for a bridge, and I feel like they never work out right.
Yeah. Although, to play devil's advocate to myself, that is usually how I do covers. Is I'm like, look, people are just here for the chorus, so I'm just gonna like burn through verse 1 and then do a couple choruses, then burn through verse 2 and then do a couple more choruses, and then I'm gonna stop playing the song because everyone's heard the part they wanted to hear of the Macarena.
But by that same token, I think that sometimes a bridge is, one of the melodic high points of the song. Like, I'm thinking of Call of Cthulhu by Regdar and the Fighters, which has quite an excellent bridge. I'm also reflecting on the fact that we played Stop recently at that acoustic radio show we did, and that song has 2 bridges.
That's true. It's very bridgy.
Which means Victor doubly hates that song. But, I think that a bridge... it should not be forced. If there is a legitimate good musical idea there, I think that bridges can be a highlight of a song and a really strong melodic change of pace. But
I 100% agree, and I think most of the time people just put it in there because they're like, songs have these, not because they have a good idea.
No, like I won't put a bridge in a song unless I think it's a good idea. Usually it'll be like, oh, does a solo go here or does a bridge go here? And then sometimes it's neither.
I've already played 2 verses and choruses. What else is there to do?
Don't bore us. Get to the chorus.
But yeah,
Exactly.
I think this is a strong composition. I think the bridge is great.
This is a great bit.
I have no complaints with it. People who have complaints with it, go ahead.
Go ahead, Gavin.
Oh, I wouldn't say that I necessarily have a complaint. Like, really, everything on this album is great, I think. There's nothing on this that I would say is a bad song. So it's not like, it's not like on Smashing Pumpkins episodes where I rate songs like Home very low and then everyone
just corrects
insane.
you with your incorrect opinion.
Everyone, that's an argument for another time. But,
That was an argument for another time. We already had that argument another time.
For hours.
Yeah. But this one, I just found it a little, compared to the other stuff around it, I thought this tune was a little boring. And obviously not boring enough for me to not like it, but if I'm gonna pick a song to show someone to get them to listen to this album, it would not be Flowers of Guatemala.
That's fair.
It's my second lowest song on my list.
So you busted out the B word, which is also the one that I used on this one. I ranked it at the bottom. I thought it was a little bit boring overall, and the overuse of vocal effects, especially reverb, took it from boring to slightly annoying. I bet live this one was probably pretty good, but the studio version I just didn't really dig. It's not terrible, but if I have to skip anything, it'll be this one.
I think if this album, I agree on the count that this album is a bit samey, and I think if there had been a couple more tracks that were more in this vein, like, we would maybe even think of this particular song a little better. But I think as it stands in the place where you live,
Getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, and to be honest, I had it even lower in my ranking, but as I was doing my write-ups for Greg, I actually moved it up.
Wow.
I found myself liking it a bit more.
I think it provides an essential change of pace for the album, personally. I think this one does stand out, even if it stands out as being the boring ballad. It does stand out, and for me, the boring ballad stands out in a good way.
I think they've got the changes of pace throughout the album. It's just, it wasn't the strongest way to do that.
Agree to disagree. I thought this was a stronger change of pace than some of the other songs. Speaking of songs that were a terrible change of pace and ruined the momentum of the album.
All right, I'm done talking about this great song.
That's right. Next up on the list is What If We Give It All Away, my last place song on the album.
Whoa!
Really? Wow.
So, the way that everyone thought that the last song was boring is how I feel about this one.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to disagree with you, but I did put this one second from the bottom because it's just mid-tempo-y. And, this one I would much more willingly defend with you need a change of pace to an album make. So if we're talking about it that way, like, this song becomes a fairly crucial part of the album. That said, not my favorite part of
I don't
the
think
album.
that the thing is, so this is the one that's right after I Believe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
What a crushing change of momentum from what I thought was one of the highlights of the album to, oh man, this is so filler-y.
I have What If We Give It Away 2 places higher than I Believe.
Me too.
Yeah.
Hey, nice.
And I think you both are fucking insane for that. It's like the Kiss fans are like, you know what, Detroit Rock City isn't that great. I'm like, no, fuck you.
Well, are you saying that? Are you saying that I Believe is REM's Detroit Rock City?
Yes.
Good lord.
I'm insane with anger!
But no, it's totally cool if you think Great Expectations is better than Detroit Rock City. That's fine.
Oh, I'm not saying I think that. I love both songs, but
for me, there's a singer-songwriter friend of ours whose name I won't mention because overall I am a fan of his music. Steve is not a fan of his music and thinks it's boring.
is it Neil Young?
Is it me?
No. He tends to write songs in this mode sometimes, and those are the songs in his set where I really wish he'd replace with his better songs. And so it reminds me of the boring songs that my friend sometimes does. And it's like, I know you have much better songs than this. Why are you doing this?
I'm trying to think of which friend this is.
I do not say his name on mic if you figure it out. But think about a singer-songwriter friend of ours who I'm really into that you think is really boring.
Tyler Bennett?
Don't say names on mic, and also no.
Just saying that because I really like Tyler Bennett. That's not the kind of music he does anymore.
Right.
And I love that now any singer-songwriter who knows both Greg and Steve is now reevaluating every interaction.
Right. Look, I love most of this dude's catalog. I bought every CD he's done, and I think he's a brilliant singer-songwriter, has some amazing pop singles, and then he has these songs where he thinks they, like, are really cool and have rock and roll swagger. And I'm just like, yo, dog, this is boring. And so this is that song in his set.
Oh, D.
No.
Other D?
No. I'm going to deny all of them.
I figured it out. I'm not saying it now.
Right, you know who it is.
Is it Neil Young?
I wish we were
Is it
friends with
me?
Neil Young.
So anyway, I'm just not into this kind of song. I just think it's just like, it has no reason to exist. Like, it doesn't have a cool enough groove for me to get locked into it. It doesn't have a fun enough hook for me to want to sing along to it. It doesn't rock enough for me to get pumped. And it's not slow enough for me to, like, you know, like it
Sway.
This has no reason to exist for me. And so I'm just like, this is easily the most skippable song.
Wow.
So I will say they have a song that's very similar to this on Document that I like way more. And this is one that, doing my write-ups, I actually moved down because I think it does have a little bit less going on than I anticipated. But I like the groove in this one. It's so, like, just kind of simple and not the thing they normally do. Or it's certainly not on this album.
And I would now, sequencing, probably heard it, where I loved I Believe so much, and there is a part of Greg that is like, every song should have the potential of being a single, otherwise, why would you write it? And so when I have a song, it's like, this is a great potential single, and then I move on to, this is an obvious filler track. It just, if this had been placed somewhere else in the album, I might not have the animosity I do for it, but it's just like, it kills the momentum of the album for me so much.
I think this is another one that has a really good bridge, too. Just to further disprove my own.
I hate bridges except for the bridges that I love.
You know what? The bridge is actually the highlight of the song.
I would agree. But I think the rest of the song is good. So you think that Flowers of Guatemala is a single compared to this?
Yes.
So
I think Flowers of Guatemala is a ballad single. I think this is just a filler track, no matter which way you slice it.
I love that we're 2 songs in, and Greg has already had way hotter takes on this album than I thought anyone would. That Flowers of Guatemala should have been a single, and I Believe is the Detroit Rock City of the REM catalog. Like, that's just... God damn.
Look, I can't
Michael
help it.
Stipe waving himself around, singing about car crashes.
I mean, that sounds kind of awesome.
Actually, no, yeah, like that does sound great.
Isn't that the music video for Everybody Hurts? It's floating over the traffic, moving fast, doing 95.
When your power stealing's out and your emergency brake is engaged.
They say if you keep the door locked, it won't crumple.
So, you guys seem to like the song more than me. Defend it. Gavin, you haven't talked much about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's my number 8, so, like, it's not a song that I'm gonna, really, it's not the mountain I'm gonna die, it's not the hill I'm gonna die on.
It's not the molehill you're gonna die on.
It's not the molehill that I will turn
Gradually
into a mountain
eroding
and
this
die
mountain.
on. Yeah. But it's a very, it's just a quaint REM 80s alternative tune, and I think it's got a pretty chorus. I think it's prettier. I think it's better than Flowers of Guatemala and I Believe. I have it rated.
You believe it's better than this?
Mm-hmm.
Huh?
Oh, baby, I know it's better.
Look,
Where's my rim shot button?
I've got a snare and a
Look at
case
the poor
down.
kid from the stupid ages.
Close enough. Thanks, Leela.
look, this song isn't. It's not bad, but it's just so okay.
Well, yeah, that's why it's 8 out of 12.
Well, I think this is a really good album, and so it speaks to the quality of the album. Where like the worst song on the album, in my opinion, is just an okay, boring song.
I like that Greg is willing to die on this hill. Die on this molehill.
No,
This song is only just okay. It needs to be ranked last. It's good enough to rank last.
I love that he's turning into Bernie.
I've realized
Thin blue line, Bernie.
I've realized I
song
might have
is
been too
okay.
harsh on the song, so I was trying to backpedal a little bit because it's not terrible. It's just it doesn't do anything for me, and for me, it kills the momentum of the album. So any other comments before we move on?
I'm now just kind of obsessed with doing Bernie Sanders talking about REM.
I mean, he was there, man.
Life's Rich Pageant. It's a great album.
We shouldn't be involved in these wars in Guatemala. We should stop actively supporting these, human rights violating regimes. Actually, that does sound like something that Bernie would be talking about in the mid '80s.
Yeah.
Yeah, what if he comes out on stage in the next debate, 2 Flowers of Guatemala?
Oh, there you go. Or Swan H.
Yeah.
We'll get to that one.
Reconstruction, you guys. We've got to start it over.
What if we... okay.
All right, so next up on the album, on the ranking, we have a hot take from Gavin that I feel is unjustifiable.
Oh, yeah.
And I will explain it, and you will all agree with me.
Can you start explaining before we tell you what the song is? Just see if you can guess.
Oh, yeah. First off, I rated this, if it's the song I think it is, I rated it second.
Yes, you did. Underneath
yes.
the book.
Okay, good.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
So this is the one I thought Greg was going to love.
Really? No. Greg hates this song, I'm sure.
No, I figured, well, because early on when you were like, you guys are all wrong, you rated it super low. And then I was like, did he fucking put underneath? And then it was you.
Yeah,
I put this second from the bottom. So this is this is Gavin who gave this 11 points out of a possible 12.
Yeah.
Gavin, you're full of shit. And I mean
so
that in the
excited.
nicest way possible. But that's ridiculous.
This was partially a vote of just trying to save it, because I knew that if I put it any lower than my top 3, then it would probably be in the bottom 2. And I didn't want that to happen to this little, beautiful, unique flower of a song that they planted in the soil of this, very kind of, people talk about a change of pace for an album. What changes the pace more than throwing in like a weird plastic 50s mambo
For 90
kind
seconds.
of song? A little minute and a half thing about romance in a bunker after like a nuclear fallout. I think that's a beautiful blast of atmosphere and mystique and joy, and that song makes me happy, and god damn it.
I mean, you're not wrong, but if we take these things as individual songs to be like if you were going to take the best 5 songs on this album and put together some kind of EP to get somebody to be like, look, check out REM, here are the best songs from Life's Rich Pageant to get you introduced to it. Nobody's putting Underneath the Bunker on that EP.
Oh no, I would.
Oh, would you really?
Yes, I would.
Just like right in the middle, 2 songs, and then Underneath the Bunker, then another 2?
No, I think you end on Underneath the Bunker.
Okay.
It's like the for those of you who are familiar with David Bowie out there, it's like the Secret Life of Arabia at the end of Heroes.
Oh, I'm looking at the Wikipedia right now. This is unlisted on the tape and vinyl version, and it's the end of side A.
So that makes it all the better.
This is actually a mid-album secret track, and I suddenly regret ranking it as low as I did.
The truth shall shut you. Jeep, boop, boop, can't talk. All right. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, retroactively, Gavin's totally right about this. Sorry, everybody else.
Nope, sorry. You have not sold me on this ranking number 2 on the album.
Greg, what's the best song on Gish?
What's the best song on Gish?
I'm gonna
Sorry, I had to chair myself for it. But
The best song on Gish is Daydream.
right.
Is this the Daydream defense?
But here's what I would defend. Daydream, you can hear the vocals in the mix. So that's step 1. 2, Daydream has like I don't know, hooks. Like Daydream's the best song on that album.
If we think of Hyena and Underneath the Bunker as a single song.
Also, is Daydream a secret bonus track? I thought I'm Going Crazy.
Did we
is
rank
the
that
secret
one
bonus
separately,
track.
though?
Bonus one.
Yeah.
I thought we just ranked it as Daydream.
No, we ranked them separately.
Oh, did we?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
But I love that the Daydream defense, but also the vocals didn't need to be more out front in this song. It's more of an audio curio than supposed to be thought of as a song. It's maybe Peter Buck was a Captain Beefheart or a Residence fan, and that kind of thing.
Look, Gavin, I get what you're saying. I think it's a good change of pace for the album, a good interlude, but every time it came up on the playlist, like, all right, I have to listen to this thing again. Got it.
There is a sequence of tunes that I would I would listen to the album, and then I would just kind of listen to a certain sequence of the album, and it was the beginning through Underneath the Bunker, and then I just restart it. So that's how much I value Underneath the Bunker.
Just like side A all the time.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, that's a good point. If that is side A on the vinyl,
Yeah.
Victor, you ranked this last place. How do you feel about this one?
So I like this song. It's just not as much of a song as the other songs on this album. But I think another thing to, like, for me, for no reason other than, like, kind of Michael Stipe's very serious resting face that appears in a lot of the photos, I don't think of REM as a band that has a lot of fun, even though, like, a lot of their catalog would prove me wrong, this song included. And I do like the idea of them, like, just being so goofy for a minute and being like, what if we recorded this fucking weird thing for a couple of seconds? And so this is like, if this album has one, this is sort of the Stand or the Shiny Happy People of this album. despite not really being single material, it is the like big goof off track. And
I like the idea of
I like the riff. I like the riff.
It reminds me of something They Might Be Giants would do.
Yes.
And I love They Might Be
really
Giants.
Yeah, that's fair. Although, if They Might Be Giants did it, there would be about a half a dozen songs that were also 90 seconds long and didn't make any sense scattered throughout the album, and way more drum machine.
And then live, they would play that sequence, and it would be amazing.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. Didn't, it was fine.
It's the
Fair enough.
second best song on the album.
I'm curious to see what the only song that you like better than Underneath the Bunker is.
I don't think it'll be a surprise, but
yeah,
I will say that
it's pretty high on the list, I'll tell you that much.
Okay.
I will say that Underneath the Bunker almost came in number 3, and when we get to the song that I did put as 3, I will explain my reasoning.
It's just too
You're
high.
so full of shit, Gavin.
Hell yeah.
Yep.
No, that's about the list. Gavin is actually less full of shit. We have Just a Touch, and that's on the list.
Maybe a little bit full of shit, though.
No. Greg, did we put this in the same place?
No, I gave it. I'm the next lowest after you. You put this last place. No, What If We Gave It All Away was my last place song.
Oh, that's right.
This got a total of 4 points from me. I was feeling extra generous towards this one. This reminds me of like sort of a fun pop punk song Steve would write, except he would write something catchier.
Heyo.
So it's just like, oh, it's like a Steve song, but not as good. So, it's still good, but just like not Steve good. So, yeah, I gave it 4 points. It's fine. I think REM, I'm going to do another bullshit comparison. So REM is like Bruce Springsteen. And Thin Lizzy and the Smashing Pumpkins are the other equivalent. So REM and Bruce Springsteen are in the same category, and so are Thin Lizzy and Smashing Pumpkins. We're like, I like REM, but I want them to rock a little bit more.
And
And
you like this.
And then, Smashing Pumpkins is like, what if REM rocked a little bit? Is sort of that comparison where, Lizzy rocks more than Springsteen, but they have a lot of like similar musical ideas in a lot of ways. And so when REM like starts to rock out a little bit more on this album, the guitar tone is too clean for me to take the rocking out completely seriously. Versus on their earlier albums, like, the guitars seem to have a little bit more grit to them and a little bit more edge. And so this is like, yeah, guys, we're rocking out with these nice, clean guitar tones. And I'm like, I feel the energy there of the performance, but I just want like a little bit more grit and balls.
Huh.
But that's how I am with Springsteen, where like I love it, and like I know that like Thunder Road is an amazing song. I just want heavier guitars on Thunder Road. But like my mind will never not say that Thunder Road is amazing and kick ass and balls to the wall, but I still just want it to be heavier. So that's just the same thing with REM. We're just like, I will not say that this is bad. I will not say that this doesn't rock, but I want it to rock a little bit more.
Where do you stand on the Smiths?
I don't listen to too much of them. So I'd have to revisit before I gave you an honest answer.
Greg likes meat too much.
Yeah. Because I went through a bit of a Smiths phase in high school. I mean, I wasn't a really depressive high school or anything. I just, thought they were good tunes. But when I got to REM, it was like, oh, this is like if the Smiths were more intellectual and rocked a little harder. So I suppose I came at it from kind of a less hard band looking up, as opposed to going from like
a harder band looking down.
I do
want to hear Morrissey do Just a Touch, though.
And look, like, I listen to music that's much softer than this, and I'm not necessarily making that comparison.
Yeah.
But I think, a lot of it comes down to, like, what I expect from the music. So, like, Bare Naked Ladies, I don't want them to rock more, because they just seem, like, light and bouncy and fun. And that's kind of what I'm expecting from them. And so with REM, they remind me a lot of Bare Naked Ladies, but they're just, like, much more serious. And I'm like...
So, like, Bare Naked Ladies, then?
Well, some Bare Naked Ladies songs.
I mean, most Bare Naked Ladies outside of 1 week.
Dude, Be My Yoko Ono, their best song.
That's fair.
Like, they have $1 million, one of their most serious.
It's true, yeah. Hey, that's got some very Smiths-esque lyrics about not wearing fur or green.
It's true. But so what I'm saying is I'm wanting there to be a little bit more grit behind what the band is doing, and it's not necessarily there. And so it reminds me of just like, the goofy, fun pop punk song Steve writes, but his are just catchier and more fun. So it's just like, it's reminding me of music I like.
Yeah.
I guess I always thought of REM, because like, I also listen to music that's both heavier and lighter. Primus, Dillinger, Zappa, and then like on the lighter side, the Nick Caves, Tom Waits, and yada yada, whatever. But
I like that you said you listened to a heavier band called Dillinger, and then you don't even bother to clarify which heavier band called Dillinger you listen to.
Dillinger Escape Plan.
Yeah, there's also Dillinger 4.
Oh, I didn't know that.
The punk band.
Oh, see, I only know Dillinger Escape Plan.
I think one of the members of that band ended up going on to be in Rise Against. So.
No. Ben Weinman, the guitarist, is in Suicidal Tendencies now.
Oh.
Yeah. They're cool guys.
Yeah, there's your there's your other comparison. Dillinger 4, also heavier than REM.
And look, I'll say that I think the bass and the drums are in the right place, but I think the guitars are just like the thing that's really lacking for me. It's just I just want a little bit more from the guitars. I'll even take Little Steven, I'll take Springsteen guitars in this band, but I just need a little bit more. And I don't know why I'm like longing that so much. And it's not on every song, but it's on this song in particular where I'm really wanting that.
You heard it here, folks. Greg also doesn't know why he is the way that he is.
Oh, I acknowledge that. Like, I am a broken man.
Dang, it got dark here. Who's throwing shade?
This one, I like almost to the exact opposite point. I think this is a song that kind of illustrates what I like about when you use a cleaner guitar tone to rock. I think, like, if you double it up and just, like, have people going nuts, it can still sound cool. And this song also sort of reminds me, like, I think this album is kind of where REM is really attempting to put the rock in alternative rock, like, for their first time in their career. And this is, like, maybe not 100%, like, completely nailed it. But it does feel like if Reckoning was, like, bumped up in energy, it kind of feels like one of those. And I also admit that it's kind of filler. But it feels fun.
So, yeah, Gavin, you put this at the bottom, so come to my side. And,
yeah, I mean, it's the song, it just, I found it to be a little too nondescript. I listened to this album a bunch this week, and as I sit here now, I couldn't tell you how Just a Touch goes.
It's the one where he goes, woo-hoo-hoo!
Yeah. Well, and it reminded me of the song that Michael Stipe and Jerry Garcia wrote together.
Just
Do you guys remember Just a Touch of Grey? And then there's the song that Michael Stipe did with Genesis.
Which is
Just an Invisible Touch. It's grammatically incorrect. But, And then the Michael Stipe, Paul Stanley song that was written for Revenge, but never made it to the album. Just a Do You Want to Touch Me Now?
Yet another joke about death, perplexing some, and just plain scaring most.
And lest we forget the song that Michael Stipe wrote for Rocky Horror Picture Show that got rejected.
Just a touch me.
Yes. We're so dumb.
Yes. So I weirdly found this one creeping up my rankings a fair amount.
Well, yeah, it sounds like one of your songs. Of course it did.
Yeah, right, indeed. So it got to the song, and I was like, yeah, this one's fine, but this album's starting to feel a little bit long in the tooth. I'm ready for it to be over. And then it kept going, and it gets to those tense staccato notes in the chorus. I'm like, oh, that part's really cool, though. Actually, the song's pretty great overall. It's just, I'm sort of tired of the sequencing. And then it gets to the woos, and I'm like, oh, well, I love some falsetto, but
yeah, you
not
do.
this time I don't.
Oh, interesting. The woos brought it down for you.
Yeah.
Man, I love that.
Because, this is just what if the computer told you to write a Steve song but made the lyrics less goofy? Yeah, I don't have anything more to say about it. You guys ready to move on?
Yeah.
Sure. Great transition. All right. Next up on the list, we have Hyena.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm shocked that this one is this low.
I'm not surprised by that. I'm surprised by how low I ranked it. I liked it a lot more than... I enjoyed this one a lot, but I think it does get a little bit hurt by sequencing in that it sounds so similar to Cuyahoga, and it's right after it. Cuyahoga. How do you pronounce that one? Cleveland is on fire.
We'll get to that.
But just they both have that hit kind of thing in the chorus that you put those songs back to back. Why did they play the same song twice in a row with different lyrics? So I like this one of the two. I like this one better, but by the time it rolls around, you're like, I just listened to this.
See, Hyena
some distance between the two.
Hyena feels to me like Just a Touch. I feel like Hyena, Just a Touch, and These Days all are kind of similar songs in a lot of ways. So have a similar momentum to them. And so, to me, they're the, the Take Me, Calling Dr. Love, Making Love, all having similar grooves to them on Rock and Roll Over. This has kind of a similar groove throughout this song.
Except this is the one that's shortest and punchiest and most energetic.
Yeah, and
just burn through it.
Yeah, so it does have that going for it.
And then you go into the great secret track.
So I think these songs, if they were all recorded by the Ramones, I would love all of them. But they're recorded by REM, and there's just not, they're punk songs, but lacking that punk grit that I want from a punk band. But composition-wise, I know I absolutely like them.
If only they'd been recorded by the Smiths, then they'd be all a little bit more boring, and you'd be pretty sure that the one about Reconstruction, he's just mad that he's not mad that slavery happened because it was bad, but because it brought immigrants to the country.
Yeah. Hyena.
Yeah, I just got to do that.
Hyena on fire. All along Cuyahoga Square. And you're always begin. Okay, the Smiths REM thing could take hours, so I won't get into it.
But yeah, this, it's another fun, energetic tune. Like Steve mentioned, it was short, punchy, to the point. But I guess it doesn't there are some songs on this album that really stand out to me as exceptional and fantastic, and this just falls into the it's fine category.
Yeah, I think I love the guitar riff in the verses of this, and the rest of it I'm kind of this is sort of just an okay song. And I agree with Steve's point that it is kind of a repeat of a couple of the songs before it. And I think now I sort of see the appeal of it, especially when I found out it's apparently a song that they wrote kind of in their like a few years before this, like in Murmur Reckoning era, which is like, I guess in the timeline, like 2 years earlier, but it does feel more like one of those songs, but they kind of just have more energy in this album and they decided to do it, I guess. I agree. It's not really anything special, but I do love the riff in the verse.
I think if this had the production of Murmur, based upon me listening to like each song about a minute of once, so not really remembering it too great, but I think this would have fit in much better on that album, and I think I would have preferred it more because I think the production of that album helped those kind of songs shine more.
Yeah.
Like, when I was listening to it, like, everything seemed to be working. Like, yes, this is the right amount of grit, the right amount of energy. The songs, even though he's mumbling, they're still catchy. So
it probably would have been slower, though.
Right, it would have been a little bit slower, but, like, there wasn't anything on that album that felt incongruous and, like, this doesn't work for me. Versus this one, like, the production of it doesn't work for me personally. Where if it was like the exact same song but with that other production, I'd be like, yeah, this is great. This is where the song needs to be. So it's maybe like in this transition period as they were changing the kind of songs they were writing. And, certain songs really shine with this production. Maybe this is like a part of the transition process where it would have sounded better on their earlier albums for me personally, but this kind of writing with this kind of production just doesn't click in my brain.
Sure.
I put this song, it was my number 5. Did I put it the highest?
Yes.
It's 5, you might have,
wow. Yeah. This one encapsulates this really great thing that I think REM gets at sometimes, which is like this dull franticness. You know what I mean? It's charged with like a nervous, frantic energy, but it's still laid back and it's still kind of restrained.
And that makes no sense in my brain.
The whole mumble wail pattern.
Yeah. And also, it was that chorus is very interesting because the actual lyrics of the chorus, the background vocals are doing way under Michael Stipe just repeating hyena.
Yeah.
There's like a whole chorus under there. That it was a bold arrangement choice.
I like it.
Bold choice, Cotton.
And next up on the list, unless anyone has anything more to say about Hyena. I'm done talking about Steve's creepy voice. All right, so next up on the list,
The transition drop gets weirder and weirder every week.
Yep. We have a song that I'm not super excited about. We have Swan Swan H. Next on the list.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
This, at the exact same spot that I had it on my list.
Interesting.
What number is this?
7.
7.
Yeah, so, about halfway through the ranking. Man, I'm just sick of Southerners talking about the Civil War and Reconstruction. Like,
They did this in 86. It was a long time ago.
that was still, like...
It was still a solid 100 years
yeah,
after
still
the war
100
in
years
question.
later.
And it was also after the album that was exclusively about that.
Right. I'm like, get over it. I'm just done with it. I think 100 years, like, just stop complaining. I think that is very reasonable to say, you had 100 years to fix this shit. Get over it. You committed treason. Get over it. I
don't sense any complaining in this song. It's just kind of like a stream of consciousness in a style.
I'm just over Southerners just bringing it up. I'm just
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
Like, I'm just so done with it. And so that, and as discussed with you, yes, it is just just noodling around in A minor. But Working Class Hero and Masters of War also existed before this song. It's like, oh, here's lyrical messages I think are interesting. Oh, here's that same chord progression, but you're talking about something that I think is way too talked about and you just need to get over yourself.
See, I feel like this song actually does have some. From my reading of it, it seems like it's a fairly thoughtful song about the Reconstruction era, and that it's most of what you tend to hear about, the post-bellum South is, is the rich people complaining that they lost their quote-unquote property and or everything got burned down. But, I think this one actually addresses some real things that, you suddenly had an entire generation that were coming back with, PTSD and the scars of war and didn't know what to do with themselves and are building knickknacks out of, human remains to sell because that's all they really have to do. And they've got the lyric about we're all free now, which is, the federal government said, okay, all the slaves are free. And then what happens to them then? There wasn't any real infrastructure to help them establish themselves. That's why we have a big part of why there are a lot of problems continuing on in the South is that,
I get what you're saying. That was 100 years before the song came out. You had the time to fix your economy in 100 years. Diversify your economy, Steve.
Diversify your portfolio.
Diversify your portfolio. We talked about this at the metal show we went to about how, yes, these are legitimate grievances. And these are things that are legitimate to complain about and to write about artistically. But the thing is, there has become this huge culture with, the South will rise again and anti-union sentiments. That's just a thing with a lot of people who say, no, the South should have won. And it's not that they don't have legitimate grievances, but at a certain point, you just gotta let it go and adjust to, what the modern climate of the day is and what's going on. And so, look, I'm sure there's some ways that the Nazis were right, but you don't want to write a song about it. Just let it go. Don't say the Nazis had a couple good points. Just drop it. Move on. Been 100 years. And they're oh, we're all free now. I understand there's sarcasm to it, but also with a bunch of white guys from the South, it sounds a little bit racist.
I don't feel like these lyrics are meant to be interpreted in the context of the 80s either. I think they're meant to be interpreted in the context of...
Right? So when did it come out? In the 80s. And think of, how many Southern rock bands, even bands I like, where I'm Skynyrd, put down that Confederate flag. And you know what they did? They stopped waving the Confederate flag because they're this is problematic. But they learned a lesson.
It's made of a ton of references that don't make sense in the 80s. You go to the 80s and you talk about, bone chains and toothpicks and wooden greenbacks, and people are what are you talking about? Those are terms that were contemporary to the context the song was addressing.
I get it, but I don't need another Southern band talking about the Reconstruction of the Civil War. We done.
I think you can say that it's not it's something that you don't like and that maybe should stop happening. But I think to say that you just can't write a song about something that happened is odd.
No, I'm saying look, they can write about it, but I'm saying that when there are so many other artists doing things referencing the Civil War and they're all from the South, it's just it's burnout. I've heard it too much.
This is the one song about the Civil War, written by Southerners that I feel doesn't come with a sense of Southern pride. I think that's an important distinction. Is you talk about, Leonard Skynyrd, they write songs about the Civil War. They're yeah, we're proud to be Southerners. We're proud of our history. And this is a song about man, our history has some really shitty, dark moments.
But the shitty, dark moments, they're largely blaming on the Union.
It's possible, yeah. Yeah,
I read the lyrics, and it's kind of just a list of shit.
It is a list of shit.
And occasional carpentry terms.
Yeah.
I actually don't know the lyrics to this song.
I didn't either, so I looked them up. This is the only one I looked up.
But also, as I discussed with Victor, a working class hero drops the word fucking in the song, thereby making it more awesome. The word fucking is nowhere in this song.
So is that the trick, Greg? Is just if they dropped a couple F-bombs, you'd be yes, I'm into it.
Would have helped.
Swan, hummingbird, fuck yeah. We're all free now.
What fucking noisy cats are we? Fuck, hummingbird.
Swan Hummingbird Fuck Yeah gives it a whole different tone.
Yeah,
that adds that southern pride that I'd be like, I'm not into this.
I think it takes a very special vocalist to get away with a melody that is more or less just two notes,
right?
And it's still an engaging, enjoyable vocal performance. You know, I think if like really anyone else tried to sing over that song, it would just be boring and
yeah. Can you picture the Smiths doing this?
Swan, hummingbird,
we're all freedom.
fucking raw, meat is better.
So I'm going to provide some ammunition for you guys to use against me, since no one has cited it. Although I think Steve is the only one who has this knowledge pool to use against me. Phil Lynott, Thin Lizzy frontman, love him, wrote a song about the potato famine in Ireland. So,
why are the Irish always complaining about the potato famine?
Yeah.
Other people should complain about it.
So you know what? I figured I'd toss you that softball since you just forgot you had it. So there you go. I'm a terrible person. The end. But not as terrible as those treasonous Southerners.
It's true.
I think the other thing is, like, you're not wrong. This isn't one of my favorite songs on this album. Like, in my notes, I believe I stated that this did, in fact, used to be my favorite song on the album. And about 3 listens in, it dropped all the way down to, I think now I have it at number 10. Although I would consider it moving it to 11.
I mean, it's really only in the middle because I put it in, like, 4th.
Mm-hmm.
Well, because
I think
now
it's
that Steve's a naturalized citizen, he has that Southern pride.
It's true. I'm sort of required by law to, be anti-union.
Yeah. South of the Canadian border is just Southern. The other thing is, I think that both I listened to Working Class Hero and Masters of War on your recommendation, and I think both of those are certainly better songs than this, but I think musically this one goes in a lot more places, and I do like that about it.
Yeah, I will agree. Like, there is more musical
also, good
diversity.
Good bridge on this one.
Damn it. All right. I think, the problem for me is I came at this as a new listener. And so if I had had more time with this song and I maybe heard this song around the same time I heard the other ones, I may have viewed this more favorably. But I think the lyrics on Working Class Hero and Masters of War are really brilliant, poignant, even today. I don't think that these lyrics are necessarily brilliant and poignant by modern standards. They're brilliant and poignant for, like, immediately after the Civil War. And that's about it.
Alternatively, you could think of them in the context of slightly before Nirvana, when this sort of, stream of consciousness, just a bunch of random, ill-defined metaphors became very du jour in alternate rock music.
Which I'm not really into.
So,
are you not a Talking Heads fan?
If you really just think of Nirvana as being a mashup of Killing Joke and REM,
it makes a lot more sense. And it's like, let's take the worst parts from both and make a band.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of making bands, you know that there was a failed supergroup that would have been Billy Corgan, Jimmy Chamberlain, and Michael Stipe.
Zwan H.
Zwan H.
Yet another joke about death, perplexing some and just plain scaring most.
I thought you were going to say something about that time that REM and Killing Joke teamed up to do Love Song in the 80s.
I don't know that. I don't really know Killing Joke that well.
Their big song is called 80s, which is Come As You Are?
Yeah.
By Nirvana. It's that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's one of the most egregious music plagiarisms I've ever heard. Like, it's pretty ridiculous for anyone who's heard it.
I gotta hear this.
Oh, it's
it's just the guitar riff. It's really just that part is almost verbatim.
But that's still really egregious. Like, the thing is, sometimes, melodies overlap, but that's a very specific riff. Like, very specific.
It's almost as specific as a Stairway in Taurus.
Yes.
Yeah.
Look, I will never deny that Led Zeppelin plagiarized a ton of people.
They did, yes.
Oh, yeah.
But
is it like Sweet Home Alabama and that Warren Zevon song?
You mean that Kid Rock song, sir?
Yeah, that Kid Rock. Sorry. I get those two mixed up so often.
Yes, that Kid Rock classic, Werewolves of London.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'll admit I'm being probably a little bit extra harsh on this song because of being done with Southerners talking about the Civil War and Reconstruction and having heard other songs done, in the 60s and 70s that were sort of strumming around A minor but having more interesting lyrical concepts.
Greg, have you ever lived anywhere that you just don't hate?
I've lived on Earth this entire time, so no.
Fair enough.
Look, I like Nashville better than Cleveland, but I still don't like that it was the Confederate capital. Like, that still makes me grumpy.
That's fair. At least we fixed our flag for the most part.
Yeah.
There's a really good hot dog place in Cleveland.
Happy Dog?
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Still not as good as Shark Seafood in Delhi, though, man. That's my guaranteed stop in Cleveland.
When are they going to sponsor us already, Greg?
Man, I don't know. That'd be a dream come true.
This episode brought to you by Shark Seafood in Delhi. Seriously, just send us some coupons and we'll make a day trip.
Right. Man, I feel bad for ragging on this song so much, but
No, you're good. I steeled myself being prepared for Greg to just hate everything I love.
We're about to get to the upper half of the ranking where I'm going to be pretty positive towards everything except for one song where I'm kind of annoyed by it lyrically. But everything else, we got smooth sailing ahead.
I have a feeling I know what song that is.
You actually might not know what song that is.
Oh.
I have a guess, and I'm predicating it on nothing but random chance.
Okay.